Good evening and welcome to The Square. Tonight's discussion is going to focus on resilience and recovery programs that have affected businesses, that support businesses, that have been affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. With us, we have guests who are going to share insights and learning curves on how to navigate during COVID and post-COVID, as well as business advisory services from institutions that are joining us tonight on how they've supported SMEs in the country in dealing with the realities that this pandemic has brought about in Rwanda. Joining us, I'd like to welcome our guests. We have with us Alice Nkurikinka, who is the Country Director of Business Professionals Network. And to Alice, I'd like to give you a warm welcome to The Square.
Thank you, Diane.
Great to have you. We also have with us an entrepreneur who's been part of the programs that have been offered by institutions such as BPN, Business Professionals Network. And with us, we have the co-founder as well as creative director of Usui Kenya, a popular footwear and manufacturing brand in Rwanda. And representing this institution is Isolde Shimwe. Isolde, very, very warm welcome to The Square.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me.
You're welcome. This is the second time I think we're having Usui on The Square. First time was your co-founder, Kevin, and now also having you, Shimwe, Isolde. Great to have you. My name is Dana PC, host of The Square. I'm always joined by The Square resident panelists, Berna Namata. Great to have you on the show, as always.
Thank you.
How are you today? We also have with us Charlie Hava. Charlie, great to have you on the show.
Same here, Dana. How are you?
Good. Before we kick off, I want to ask the Square resident panelists, Charles or Berna, if you have any midweek highlights you'd like to share with the viewers, anything that caught your attention in the week thus far. Charles, anything you'd like to share?
Yeah, a dark day in my week.
Oh, no.
First of all, I'm extremely disappointed by something that came out in the media this morning that started coming out yesterday in the justice sector. And to the effect that everyone, public official especially, who begins to get suspected of having been involved, that's at least the insinuation. So my assumption is that there's a lot that's going to come out more. The moment they think that you may have thought of stealing government money, they freeze your accounts.
But Charles, that's hyperbole. Thought of stealing,
yes.
Or there's evidence?
No, there's no evidence.
Okay.
The moment that there's a thought, they start investigating.
Suspicion.
Yes, suspicion. They make sure your children don't eat by freezing your accounts. Whether you're proved guilty or innocent, that's a conversation for another day. But in the meantime, take all your property, freeze your accounts, make sure you don't leave until further notice.
And this is a dark moment for you because your background is in law.
No, no. It's not about that. It's not about my background being in that, my reading being in that. It's about two things. One, the presumption of innocence until proven guilty, but also because property is an inviolable right. And we'll have a conversation another day about matrimonial regimes. So what's going to happen tomorrow is people will just say, wife, take your own property, children, take your own property, husband, take your own property, and we'll see each other another day.
So you think it's a slippery slope in your opinion?
I think there's a very big conversation to be had around this topic. Yes.
Fair enough. Brenna, anything you'd like to share?
I'd love to engage him on that, but I hope we'll have the expert here to intervene in the debate around this issue. I think the debate is bound to get polarized and lose meaning in between, but I think the message that they are sending is fundamental, that, when you hold public office, the integrity, there are a lot of expectations. So I think the spirit of the pronouncement is simply to get whoever is in charge, in public office, to give it the due respect that it demands and comes with. But on a personal note, today I was just thinking of the experience throughout the pandemic. I've been having calls with teams across the region, around the world, and for some reason, for most of us in the region and across Africa, we always have connection issues. So it's either
in terms of internet?
Yes,
Okay.
internet. And I just wonder whether it's an African problem or it's almost impossible. And I'm saying this is like across. The line will break and then someone has lost connection. And this is the Africa we are talking about that we want. And we just can't get connected. In this country, there's a lot of PR around connectivity. But anybody who has used the internet will tell you having a stable network is quite a challenge. And not just about cost. Even if you pay for the most expensive, the quality of service is still a problem.
And you're raising this because we're living in a time whereby, if anything, now more than ever, we need reliable internet connectivity.
Yeah, because
these are the realities this pandemic is showing us.
If we're moving the office to at home or to any convenient place, then you need the connection. But somehow, the infrastructure is not there. And I don't know if, for instance, RURA as a regulator is really paying attention to the quality service. They tend to pay attention to voice. But you find that telecom companies get away with just providing a poor service in terms of connectivity. You do double the hashtag and do this and you activate the bundle and you just don't know where it goes. Before you know it, you have no connection. So I think there's a fundamental problem there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So midweek
Can I
highlights.
say something extremely passionate about what?
I hope it's brief because we're here not to talk about that.
I was
in detail.
pained today. The biggest property fair in East Africa that everybody looks after is called the East African Property Investment Summit. I was a speaker today. I woke up, first thing I did in the morning, I told my ISP, bump up.
And you're doing it virtually?
Yes. And I could not do my presentation because my network was messed despite it being bumped up.
Yeah.
I didn't want to say it because I thought I would be too emotional.
You are.
Yes.
I can see you're massively affected. So midweek
I'd rather
highlights.
leave it for another day.
Yeah,
No, we
midweek
need to have
highlights. Midweek highlights from
Yes.
Charles. Yeah, absolutely interesting point to raise regarding what your midweek highlight was. In terms of what Charles was talking about, as well as you, Berna, internet connectivity. I think these are issues definitely I think we can visit on the square with people who are in charge of offering these services. So thank you for that. We'll just quickly now go to what we are here for. I'd like to thank our guests once again, Alice and Isolde. Great to have you on the show. This is a conversation we've had on the square since the pandemic began, just looking at different businesses affected by the pandemic. We've looked at the interventions made by corporates. We've looked at interventions made by the civil service NGOs and the role of NGOs. We've looked at the economic recovery plan. We recently had here the governor of the central bank talking to us about the economic recovery plan that's aimed at supporting businesses that have been affected by this pandemic. But tonight we're here to look at SMEs, and I'll start with you, Alice, based on a BPN survey, and this study was done by your institution. And it was a study conducted to see how SMEs were affected by the pandemic. And if you'll just allow me to just read very quickly, at least from an excerpt from this survey, the data that you collected between March and April, basically when the lockdown was effected and towards, the middle of the lockdown, you collected data from 134 SMEs in Rwanda. And this information shows that around 57% of SMEs shut down. They were not doing business during this period of the survey. My question to you, if you can just share key insights from this study, and if you can give us an idea of how SMEs are doing in the country. We're in the 4th month plus of lockdown. So share a bit of insights with us from the BPN studies that were done by BPN as well as the University of Rwanda on the study, as well as how some of these SMEs are faring right now.
Yes. Thank you, Diane. Thank you for getting back to the survey. As you mentioned, we did the survey as soon as the lockdown was kicked off. We did that survey on one hand, because we wanted to stay close to the entrepreneurs and be in a position to provide to them information and solutions, short-term and long-term solutions. And on the other hand, to be able to inform public and policymakers about the situation that the entrepreneurs were facing and how they were handling it. At that time, we did it together with the University of Rwanda, so we decided to make it a professional survey. And so what we did is to define some key criteria that we were monitoring and that we are still monitoring. On one hand, how far the health situation is impacting the SMEs, the way they are handling the employees, the economic impact that it's having, and their concerns, how they handle the whole situation and what circumstances they are. And the findings were quite, parts of them were quite surprising, others were shocking, as you can imagine. On one hand, to see the drop in revenues. In average, the SMEs reported that the SMEs that we interviewed had an average revenue around 19 million Rwandan francs. And during that time, the revenues had dropped drastically towards 4 million or something like that. And the majority could not really benefit from home office solutions. So that's why the majority were totally closed. And what struck us the most was the resilience that we saw. The resilience that the entrepreneurs were not really shouting or crying for solutions and asking for help. They were looking for ways to be part of the solutions. And I think it's something that's really telling. I believe that as a country, we have entered a new era, an era where entrepreneurs are no longer doing business for survival. They are no longer doing business just for themselves, but they want to be part of the country's vision, the country's growth. And so the resilience we saw was that the entrepreneurs constantly stated that they will fight, they were fighting, they were motivating each other, and we had statements like, let's not be discouraged. Our employees are looking up to us. Our employees want us to provide solutions to them. So I think that's, for me personally, that's a key finding from this survey, that despite all problems, despite all challenges, that we are growing, we are grooming companies and entrepreneurs that are ready to be part of the country's development, that want to take responsibility in the economy. And we should include these entrepreneurs in all solutions. We should not consider them, I do not want to talk about them like people who need help, people who are in need. Let's look at how can we collaborate with entrepreneurs to find solutions that will help our economy to continue to strive, to continue to grow. Yes.
Thank you, Alice. Wow, I love that. I love the way you're really passionate about the work you do in supporting private sector in this country, specifically through SMEs. And I really love the way you talked about, let's not look at them as just, people who need help or support. They also need to be part of the solution-oriented process. Very, very important words coming from you and the work that BPN does. Before I go to Isolde and see what she has to say and share her story of Usui Kenya, I would like to hear from my resident panelists on if there's anything you'd like to touch upon based on what Alice said. Berna?
The research, so I wouldn't comment on the research and the findings, but I think that SMEs actually need help. I can understand people not shouting out for help because around this time people are looking at the basics, looking for food. But the truth is SMEs need help, and I'll give you an example. The brand I represent today, we are an SME. Just before the pandemic, we were going through an audit.
But just wait, I'd like to cut you short a bit on that. The brand you represent is an SME.
Yes.
Nation Media Group is an SME.
In Rwanda, it is an SME. So, I mean, this is, you can go to...
I think Blue Oceans is an SME. Usui Kenya is an SME. I don't know about Century or Nation Media Group.
Biggest SME.
Let me explain. The brand I represent in Rwanda is called Nation Holdings Rwanda.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. It's the one that pays taxes to Rwanda Revenue Authority. So we are under an SME. And so before the pandemic, we were going through an audit. And soon the audit was done. And before we knew it, after the pandemic, RRA is asking for their payment. Now, remember throughout the pandemic, we've not been in circulation, there are newspapers on the streets, we're not making any money. We're at zero revenue. Yeah. If you look at the target market for the help so far that is available, our sector is not really there. So how do we survive if we don't need help, if we are not helped and supported to survive? So this is why I feel that it's a sort of a blanket statement when you say SMEs do not need help. There are those, of course, depending on the uniqueness of the business, that may be able to pivot and change strategy. But there are those that completely shut down, like the study showed. So are we happy that they have closed and we move on, or we want to see how we can revive these businesses? Because remember, these small businesses especially are household, are family businesses. They support, so many groups of vulnerable people. So if we don't pay attention to them, I think we have a bigger problem.
I think the question, based on what you're saying, absolutely a valid point, Brenna. I think the question I'd like to put forward to Alice is the nature, and maybe you can speak specifically as country director of BPN. I know there are different interventions, there are different programs, whether it's Inhomoko, whether it's MasterCard and ESP. There are different programs, interventions that are being set up to help during this period, businesses and SMEs. But Alice, based on what Brenna is saying, if you could tell us what is the nature of SMEs that you give your services to, or who deserve these services more? Because, Brennan, we talked about this. It's a big basket. There are programs, there's money being rolled out, but who gets it? Who gets the support? Who gets the help? And if, Alice, if you could respond to Brenna's query, just very briefly, how do you decide who gets these resilience and recovery programs in the massive field of SMEs that make up over 90% of businesses in this country?
Yes. Yes, it's a truly big challenge. Yes, it's very right that all businesses, or the majority of the businesses, are impacted, and the problems are real. What I would like to insist on is that there are different kinds of SMEs, and some of those SMEs should be part of the solutions and should be part of the dialogue. That's what I mean. But all SMEs are impacted. I mean, Isolde can probably share how far a company like Usuri is affected by the pandemic. And so the different SMEs that we have cannot have the same solutions because the challenges are not the same. We have challenges that are related to sectors, obviously tourism and hospitality, events, they are shut down and they are probably, we have many months to go like that. We have other businesses that managed to pick up again, or other businesses that did not necessarily be deeply affected, like agriculture, food processing, or things that are consumable that we needed or we still need throughout the crisis. But I do believe that we have an opportunity to distinguish between the different businesses. I do not believe that there is one blank solution for SMEs. And so the solutions that have already been provided, we have seen grants coming up. You mentioned MasterCard foundations. So different donors have lended their hand to provide solutions. But I do not, we still have a long way to go. As you mentioned, some businesses are shut down. Some businesses probably will not even survive. I don't think that we should strive to save every business. It will not be possible. Some businesses will not survive. But I do believe that some businesses could be part of the solution. And we have done a great job in terms of public health, for example. We have been assessing the situation, informing the public, finding solutions, putting measures in place that everybody identify with. And I do believe that also in terms of entrepreneurship, we should do the same. We should analyze the situation and highlight to the entrepreneurs how the situation is, how long is it going to take, and then engage in a dialogue with them. And that's what we've been doing on our side at BPN. That's why we run this survey. We stay in dialogue with the entrepreneurs. We try to share information. We do not try to make the problem, to soften the problem. It's a big challenge. Probably we have another year to go. So what do we do? And if we constantly, we cannot, how should I put this? We should not think that by injecting a little bit of money that we will survive, that all businesses will survive. That will be an illusion. And not all businesses will need the same amount of money. We've seen grants coming up, but many businesses that are on a steep curve of growth, they cannot benefit from those small grants, because the grants will help them maybe meet to the end of the month, but then what next? So, and my point is that we should be in a dialogue with them. What can we do? What do you need concretely? And those dialogues should be as part, and should be shared with all entrepreneurs. These are the lessons learned. These are the best ways to go. These are the solutions that you can apply.
Thank you very much, Alice. Ben, I hope your query or your question was answered to a certain degree by Alice. Yeah, Charles.
Yeah, yes. I want to comment something about onto something that she said that it's really not a response per se, but I'm impressed because you see, she raises something extremely important about the role of entrepreneurs and how entrepreneurs think, in line with being solution-oriented. You know, even COVID, pre-COVID, during COVID, post-COVID, even if government woke up in the morning and said we have nothing for you, entrepreneurs would still think about how to solve that question. And I disagreed with this on Bana during our COVID conversation, and where she thought that government had an obligation to provide entrepreneurs solutions. And Isolde was the worst person to bring onto this show, because on Usuri's journey, we have found ourselves in my other life as somebody in the property management space. We found ourselves in their space. So we are always talking to them, and I like what these girls are always saying. They come to us and they say, we want to grow. How do we grow? You know, so when you're solution oriented, it doesn't matter what comes in your way. You have to find a way.
I think, Charles, from what I'm picking up from what you say, it's kind of like this pandemic, especially in the entrepreneurial and specifically SME space, it's kind of like survival of the fittest. Right?
No.
I think that's what you're saying. Because, yes, I mean, you can depend a bit on the grants, like Alice was saying, and government solutions and so forth and so on.
No, I disagree. No.
No, I'm trying to understand what you're trying to say.
No. The point I'm saying is...
But they'll find a way regardless.
Yes. It brings out the best... It brings out the best entrepreneurial brains in you.
And therefore, those who can survive will survive. The rest won't.
The best definition of an entrepreneur is the one in the current times. Yes.
Okay. So this just leads you into hearing from an entrepreneur who's on the show tonight. Isolde, it's great to have you on the show. And like I said earlier on, we are 4+ months into the pandemic. And obviously, you, like many other SMEs across the country, has been, Usui Kenya has been affected by the coronavirus and the COVID-19 pandemic, especially because you're also a client-facing business. You need people to come into your stores. I know you have manufacturing, you have a factory where you make your shoes using recycled products. So a lot of the product, when it's actually on the shelf, has gone through a lot of human interaction and what have you. So if you could share with us just start by telling us, how was Usui Kenya hit by the pandemic, and what learnings or what insights have you absorbed in terms of how you're going to move forward with the new realities that COVID-19 has brought?
Well, thank you very much, Diane. I could say that just like any other business in the whole world, we have been tremendously affected by the COVID-19, and it was a really tough period for us. So we had to sit down and really go back into our projections and go back into our strategies to figure out what to do now. And just like Charles was saying, the best definition of an entrepreneur is the entrepreneur that they are right now. So we had to go back really into the plans that we had and the things that we wanted to do, to look at them on the other with a different eye, to for us to be able to survive as a business or keep going. Some of the strategies that we have set were to strongly invest in selling online, our e-commerce platforms, which comes, of course, hand in hand with a lot of buzz that you have to put on social media. Social media was really a great tool that was used, especially during the lockdown, and even after that. People, and as you said, our products are human-centered. People like to touch the product. They like to feel them before they buy them. So this time we had to figure out a way to show them the products without them necessarily touching them, but still they buy them. We also had to, of course, invest a lot in creating a solid or anti-fragile supply chain where we still get the shoes to the person at the time expected and as they expected. It was also, again, through going back into what do we have and how do we get it to the people that we want, to the people that we want it to. So it was, again, a lot of critical and very creative thinking to be able to reach out to that. One other thing that most of the people tend to forget is to really invest in the people that are doing that job. The people have to understand that that person is still waiting on them to get the product to them. So we also did a lot of trainings of our team members, a lot of back and forth on how can we improve our service. This time you're not looking at somebody, you're not smiling at somebody. This time you are sending them an email confirming their order. How do you make sure you keep that language that still invites them to come back? That I would say that those were really mainly the biggest strategies that we invested strongly in to be able to keep going as we are right now. We still have a long way to go. Luckily, things are picking up currently, but there's still so much to do, and there's still so much that we need to figure out to reach out to our full potential, reach out to the people that want and need our products.
If I can just ask you very quickly, do you think, obviously these are things that you already had in the pipeline, so obviously with the pandemic it was a bit easier for you to quickly just focus and stick on them and adapt these as your new sort of business model forward. But do you think the pandemic kind of fast-tracked you embracing these new strategies? You know, you're depending a little more on e-commerce, you're digitizing your products. Personally, I've seen some of your products on social media where there are lots of really nice videos showcasing your shoes, and there's a lot of thought process, I can tell, obviously, that's gone into it. But do you think this is here to stay? And do you think the pandemic kind of pushed you even faster than you thought to adapt these new strategies for your business?
Well, I have to say that we initially were investing a lot in that, but recapping or going back a bit, the culture of e-commerce or buying online was really not that strong, especially locally. So there was also a little bit of an element of educating people to do that. So we had to get on the phone calls following each step of somebody that was buying online to educate them on how to use that. There's no difference on our website, www.usuiky.com, to Azara or any other, but we had to do a personal or one-on-one, really educating people to buy that, to be able to go up to finalizing the purchase. But also, I think it was a great push for the Rwandans in general to actually move their thinking and also move their drive to want to learn and apply these new skills or this new norm to for them to get what they want.
Very interesting. I'd like to ask Alice also an opinion before I get to Charles and Berna. If you can tell us, I think one of the key aspects for SMEs to survive in this climate is to really shift to digitization of their products as well as e-commerce. And Alice, in your opinion, what's your business advisory? Because you're in the business of giving advice to SMEs. What is your understanding? What is your take on how ready we are as Rwanda to engage our SME sector into adopting e-commerce strategies and as business models?
Yes. Coming back to the survey showed that the majority of the SMEs that we interviewed could not really benefit from e-commerce and from digital solutions, because at that time, it was in March, April, at that time, we underestimated, as companies, as SMEs, we underestimated the power of e-commerce and the meaning. And in the meantime, we have seen a strong pickup in that area, and be it in e-commerce, being it in e-marketing, being it in digital payments. And so I think we should build on our strength, and as a country, as Rwandans, we adopt very quickly, and we adopt to changes, and we are forward-thinking. And so that you can see clearly that entrepreneurs, taking an example, it's an event company. Before they were filming online streaming of events. Entrepreneur can have, and what we very often talk about in business development is opportunities. What could be the opportunity for myself? And so the entrepreneurs who are struggling right now, those who are trying to focus on what can I do, what else can I do, where can I get help, that type of attitude is what will bring the companies forward. That's what will bring the entrepreneurs forward. And there is a big opportunity in e-commerce, in digital solution. And I do believe in our policy brief out of the survey, it's one of the solutions that we suggested, that solutions that are coming on the market should not only be grants and financing, but also subsidizing digital solutions, because they will help many companies to survive, companies that do not have necessary the means to invest in the necessary technology, and that are still doing everything they can to keep the employees, to keep the company going, and at the same time looking for fundings to be able to invest in those digital solutions. So that's an area we still need to put a lot of support in.
I think that's very interesting that you talked about Digitech as a company that's an event-based photography film. I know them personally, and I'm just very happy to hear the turnaround thinking was to now start streaming these events, because funerals, weddings, we're all streaming this stuff. And it's really interesting to see how they realize there's an opportunity there. Let's use our infrastructure and our equipment and just look at a different business model. Yes, Charles?
Yes, Alice says something that I don't know how BPN works, but I think there's a fabulous opportunity for them that's not only unique to organizations like theirs, but other entities. And I'll just drop a name. I'll drop 3 names of private equity funds that operate in the Rwandan space. BDF or Business Partners or Growfin. Say, what if we should not wait for entrepreneurs to bring their ideas? And instead of these multiple emails that banks get, that banks send us to say, have you been affected by COVID? Can we give you money? No. It's actually a notch higher. Say, we will give you money if you have been affected by COVID. But the catch is, we are co-investors. So, for argument's sake, if you walked up to Blue Oceans or Usui Kenya and you said, the thinking is mine, the money is mine, the risk and the write-up and everything is mine, but this is what's going to happen. We will split the revenue or the profit by X percentage. And we are not reinventing the wheel, by the way, and I'll give practical examples.
Course, yeah.
I'll give very, very practical examples. I know for a fact that Usui Kenya, when they were starting their businesses, all correct me if I'm wrong, it was not entirely your money. You got training from XY sources, you got your brains from your school, you got your money from your parents. It was a pool of different human and monetary resources, including probably money. But correct me if I'm wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong, right? But the rest is right. But including training. Thank you. So don't underestimate the importance of the training. And that's where I'm coming from. Because that helped you get to where you are. And the role of private equity funds cannot be better emphasized than at this particular moment. And I see myself, I see the likes of BPN escalating themselves to such a level. I see the likes of BDF, I see the likes of Growfin, I see the likes of Business Partners being more relevant today. I see commercial banks investing in private equity funds so that they can scale up to adding their debt participation in, because if you look at the Economic Recovery Fund today, when the governor was on the show explaining to us, it's purely about debt. But that's not all that entrepreneurs need. There's a huge aspect of equity risk that needs to be plugged in there.
So just very quickly, there's proactiveness on these financial institutions.
Yes. And there's money to be made.
And there's money to be made.
Because if you're convinced that you can resurrect my business of manufacturing these cups today, and I want to say a particularly interesting story I learned today. There's a drink called Snap. I only learned today that it is Rwandan made and it is imported. So the drink and everything else is Rwandan, with the exception of the packaging. So the Chinese compelled them to export the formula. And then we import it back.
But that's an interesting point on
so I think
financial institutions being proactive and approaching these SMEs with a different approach or a different model.
As Ali said, COVID is a baptism. It's an opportunity that it has given to us, and I think we should snap it with both hands.
I like that you said baptism. Were you going to say baptism by fire? Because I think it is baptism by fire. Barna, is there something you'd like to share?
Yes. That for entrepreneurs, most of them actually don't need guidance in terms of ideas. It comes naturally that people who are entrepreneur will be solution-oriented. Yeah, but I want to go back and insist on facilitation and the support that they need. today we talk about streaming like it's smooth. Try watching any live event and see the hiccups. Now, if you're, what's the company name?
Digitech.
Yes.
Yes.
You've reoriented your business and you're into streaming, but you don't own the fiber that you're streaming on.
Which is what you're talking about earlier on. Yes.
Yeah, you don't own the fiber. So your event, and the people watching you don't know this, even if you've paid for a certain bandwidth. If your event is interrupted, it will be a problem, as a company. So I feel that there's room for facilitation for businesses. If we are saying we are going digital, let us try as much as we can to provide the infrastructure that is needed to facilitate these businesses. I'll give another example. Today we have many small businesses around events. Because the country has been positioning around conferences, meetings, and now, before the pandemic, most people had made orders for events later in the year, August, September, weddings, and all these things. Paid money, and they're just waiting for delivery. As we speak, most of them are at zero revenue. Okay? They don't even know when they'll be able to have these events. Their goods have not arrived. So you tell me how such people will not need help. How are they surviving?
So
how do you reorient if you've, let's say, 10,000, you've taken $10,000 and ordered shipment around events, the decoration and blah, blah, blah. And now you don't have an event till the end of the year. What happens to your business? What kind of entrepreneurship do you need, to...
Or entrepreneurial thinking.
Yes.
That, it's a sort of magic switch in your head where you'll get a solution to this. I think
and
the
we
best
must not forget the issues we have had, for instance, moving cargo.
Yes.
Up to today, the issue of cargo movement across the region is not resolved. The big fish have been able to move their cargo.
Of course.
For small traders, it's still a problem. The issue is unresolved.
I think that question, I think Alice would best answer that question. Alice and Isolde, if you can speak to what Berna is very passionately decrying, because these are real issues that actually face SMEs, as like you said, smaller businesses. Alice, I'd like to start with you.
Yes. I think in the discussion you had, there are two key points that I would like to reply with. One is the different stakeholders in the ecosystems, the financial institutions, the entrepreneurs, the internet providers, the tech area. We have the government. We have different players. And one important strategy, or one thing we need to work on as a country, is establishing mutual trust between all those organizations. That's what has made the difference in the other countries. Taking like Switzerland as an example, as soon as the lockdown was imposed, SMEs could get 500,000 within 1 month, 500,000 straight away from day bank and backed up by the government with very little administration. Why is that possible? It's possible because those SMEs have established a strong responsibility, a strong stake in the economy. The country saves a lot of money. People are used to savings. The government can rely on what the SMEs are doing, and vice versa. And that's one thing that we still need to build. We need to build this mutual trust between the different players. And on the other side, the different challenges that people are facing, yes, imported things that have not been, that didn't arrive, loans that people have taken that they cannot pay back now because they have no clients. So there are a lot of problems around, and all those problems. It will be a challenge for us to find solutions for all those problems. And I do believe that we should not only look at the situation right now, and especially us. I mean, I can say that because my role is business development. And we should much more look at what was missing. what can we do so that we get away from such situations, that again, a crisis like this does not shake the economy. And that's why at BPN, I didn't say what BPN does exactly. I assume that everybody knows. So we do provide business development services, focusing on high potential entrepreneurs, those that have the capacity, the willingness, the potential to create jobs. And those entrepreneurs, once they get the right mindset, they can grow very fast. As we have seen exactly in the example of Usui, we have seen companies, amazing companies growing in Rwanda in the past few years, big brands, Rwanda Clothing, Motions. We've seen schools, private schools coming from scratch within 5 years, growing up to be among the top 10 schools in Rwanda, like Dove's Montessori schools. So those things are possible, and those are SMEs. And unfortunately, the pandemic hit us exactly at the wrong moment, at the moment where these entrepreneurs were starting to shine. They were starting to set the standard very high and being examples for others. And I do believe that for those entrepreneurs, those, allow me to call them high flyers, that we should think of solutions. We should be in dialogue with them, and what can they do to pull the other entrepreneurs up, to keep the standard high, and to be able to sustain the growth that they have started. For them, it will not be sufficient to fill the gap of the revenues. It will be important to find a solution together with them that will allow them to continue on that path of growth. And that's when our economy, even hit by this situation, that's the only way that the economy can continue to grow, can pick up at a certain level and continue to grow at the same pace.
I'd like to hear what Isolde has to say to that. Isolde, what's your comment on that? The way forward, like Alice has been saying, the sort of mindset that we need, the sort of mechanisms or models or business approaches that we need going forward. Hearing from you as an entrepreneur and co-founder of Usui Kenya.
Well, thank you. I think that it's, as Alice was mentioning, the trust between the key partners. I think it's also important. I will talk from personally. I think it's very, very important that we as entrepreneurs work together and find ways to collaborate. I think collaborations are the things that are really going to, I strongly believe that the collaborations are the things that are going to help us lift each other up. Meaning, if I make shoes and there's a and if I create sustainable solutions through recycling and create shoes, there's a million other, or there's possible partners that I could collaborate with to get some of the wastages or our brand recycled tires. Some of the tires that I could get. It doesn't have to be a garage, or I don't have to pick them from the streets. They could be somebody that I could definitely work with. And I think right now, as we are the problem solvers as entrepreneurs, our minds are set to be open and to hear what we can do together. One other thing that I have to mention, though, that should be put at first or thought as by the government especially, is to create incentives for businesses to be able to survive this. We're not only talking about money because, again, as an example, Alice was giving us some of the businesses that are on a peak do not necessarily need the maybe 8 million from Inhomoko. It's just going to solve a problem for 1 month, but what's going to happen next month? So I think the government should absolutely create more incentives for businesses. I'll just give one quick example of workers' taxes. They have never been, unfortunately, they haven't been dropped throughout, and people were working remotely from home. Some of the people got salary cuts, and even some businesses have chosen to, depending on what business it is. For example, speaking for Usui, we have kept all our people on payroll during the lockdown and after that. but we still had to pay the taxes, which was a very big load on us, and which I think the government should definitely look into and look at ways to possibly lift that for for maybe a few months until things go back to normal. Alice was also talking about the funds that have been put for entrepreneurs to use as an example in Switzerland. We have gotten some funds as well, but there's still that challenge of if you are going to apply for a loan, you need a collateral, and not all SMEs necessarily have collaterals when they not necessarily have collaterals. So I think that. And I think it's important that we get people from the government, the people that set the rules and the laws, coming to us and asking us what we need, because there's plenty of things that we need that could facilitate us or help us go through this pandemic.
Thank you very much, Isolde. We have come to the end of the show, and from what I picked between you and Alice, very insightful comments, but there needs to be a greater dialogue between government and private sector, especially SMEs. This make over 90% of businesses across the country in seeking solutions and understanding how these businesses can still be supported to keep on ensuring the livelihoods and economic growth, of the country. Thank you very much, Alice and Isolde. It's great to have you on. I think there needs to be a part 2 and 3 of this conversation. Brenna, Charles, if you have any closing remarks, very briefly, that you'd like to comment on what they've said.
She just said it.
She said it, exactly. Charles, anything you'd like to add?
I think there's money to be made, a lot of money to be made from helping entrepreneurs. And for the likes of Alice, you have a golden opportunity in a problem. That's my case.
Thank you very much. Charles, Brenna, Alice, BPN, Business Professionals Network, as well as Usui Kenya, thank you for joining the show. To the viewers, unfortunately, we didn't have time to read out your comments, but please keep the conversation going using #TheSquareRW on Twitter, as well as social media platforms such as Instagram and Facebook. I would like to also thank our partners, Uzi Collections and Bourbon Coffee, for always supporting The Square. And to viewers, thank you for tuning in. Have a good night and see you again next week. Goodbye.